Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I am doing something new. And I've done like film reviews before where I just kind of talk about the movies, but this time it's going to be with a book. Percy Jackson, the Olympians, the first one, Lightning Thief. It was the first of a 5-book series by Rick Riordan. And it was very, very popular. It still is. They made they started making a TV show a couple years back, I think, and I think season 2 just came out. They're making season 3. But between the two adaptations, the movies and the TV show is the good one from what I know. But this is about the book, and I think the way I'm going to split up, like, the sections is by chapter, because obviously chapter books will have chapters. So there's 22 chapters in this book, about 380 pages, I believe. If you give me a minute. Well, almost 380, like 5 pages off from being 380, but yeah, so without further ado, let's just get right into it, right to the first chapter. Alright, in my movie videos, I know I usually have a section of like every character you would need to know. So of course I'm gonna need one here. Except obviously there won't be this person plays this character. In this case, there wouldn't be that because it's a book. So I guess the important characters would be Percy Jackson, Grover Underwood, Annabeth Chase, Sally Jackson. I might butcher some of these names, and I say butcher some of these names, I really mean like the Greek names, like Chiron? Tell me how to pronounce that. Is it Chiron or Chiron? I'm assuming Chiron? Luke Castellan. I always accidentally say Luke Calrissian. I'm like, wait, no, that's Lando from Star Wars. Clarice LaRue. Mr. D, or again, a name I'm gonna probably mispronounce, Dionysus. Hades, Poseidon, Zeus, Athena, and some more minor ones like Medusa and the Furies, and I could not take this villain seriously when he goes by Krusty, but he actually does have a real name because he's like a giant in Greek mythology, I guess. But he went by Krusty, and then there's I don't know who, like Cerberus, like the favorite dog that Hades has, the Greek myths. He was so adorable in this book. Like, he had a very brief appearance, but he was so adorable in this book. So anyway, that was yeah, just realized, wait a minute, I'm going to do this list of characters. So there's that. Let's just get on to the first chapter now. Okay, this time, first chapter. Alright, so we first meet our main character, Percy Jackson, when he's on a field trip with his class. He goes to a place called Yancey Academy. I guess it's basically like a boarding school for unruly kids or something like that. I don't know, one of those kind of boarding schools. And basically on the way there, like, he's getting kind of this feeling that something weird might happen. And, like, someone who goes to school with him is Grover Underwood, who quickly became, like, his best friend. And Percy has trouble making friends because I guess his unruly behavior, but, he has ADHD, and they'll just, which, as someone with ADHD, I mean, I guess... Yeah, but like, of course, we later learned that his ADHD is actually just something to do with the fact that he's half a Greek god, so like a half-blood, whatever, demigod, I guess. I guess he's a demigod. Basically, yeah, he's also, I was thinking ADHD. Besides ADHD, he's dyslexic, which. It's basically something that makes people... I don't have that, I'm not dyslexic. I know people who are, and basically it makes it kind of hard to be able to read things, I guess. But, yeah, of course, later he learns that he's not actually dyslexic. He's he just reads everything in ancient Greek, but that's not the point. Back to, but the point is, he's there, and at this school at Yancey, there's only one teacher he really likes, and that is a guy named Mr. Brenner. He is the Latin teacher, I think. Okay, I know he actually is, but like, in this point in time, he's, I think, the Latin teacher. He's in a wheelchair, and but of course, like at any school, Percy does have a enemy, two enemies actually, not just a fellow classmate named Nancy Beaufort, who's kind of a jerk, but a teacher named Mrs. Dodds, who seems to really not like Percy. And hey, you know what? And you know what? We get to find out just why after Nancy Beaufort bothers Percy, and somehow she ends up in a fountain, drenched in a fountain, and Mrs. Dawes is like angry, and so she's like, "Hey, Percy, follow me back inside the museum," because this was during lunch break. And so Percy comes, and the next thing he knows, something happened to Mrs. Dawes. She's like a monster, and stuff. And then Mr. Brenner's here. He's wheeling his wheelchair. He's throwing Percy a pen. Pen turns into a sword, and boom, Mrs. Dawes is gone. And then when Percy walks back outside, he's like, "What the hell just happened?" There's a new teacher in place of Mrs. Dawes, and no one seems to remember who she is. So this is really when the mystery kind of, like, the initial mystery, how these books go, like, there's an initial mystery, something weird's going on, and then the entry to, like, the magic world, the structure, like, like, that is kind of the start of it, because Mrs. Dawes turned into a monster. He basically vaporizes her. He is the she is the pre-algebra teacher, by the way, hence the chapter name. I vaporized my pre-algebra teacher. Accidentally vaporized, though. Don't forget the accidentally, because he didn't mean to. But no one seems to know what Mrs. Dodds. So this leads us into chapter 2. Alright, so chapter 2 is called 3 Old Ladies Knit the Socks to Death. And if you know anything about Greek mythology, then you already know that these 3 old ladies are the prophets. Yeah, but so basically, like I said, like Mrs. Dodds, it's like she never existed. Instead, there's this like blonde lady who's the pre-algebra teacher, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, she's been here like all year." Like, Percy's like, "No, I'm pretty sure there was a Mrs. Dawes." And everybody seems convinced, but then when he would ask Grover, he would occasionally ask his friend Grover, and Grover would hesitate. And this leads Percy to believing that Grover knows something. One night, Percy's kind of going down the hallway, and then he hears Grover and Mr. Brenner talking in Mr. Brenner's classroom. And they're talking about this stuff like deadlines, solstice, kindly one, and like Percy's kind of like, huh? And he sees a shadow on the wall of like what definitely doesn't look like Mr. Brenner, like looks taller. But Percy accidentally runs into something, he knocks something over, there's a noise, which obviously gets the attention of Mr. Brenner and Grover. And like so Percy quickly hides, and eventually those two decide, it's nothing. So but when they were searching down the hallway, though, Percy heard like an odd noise, like a hoof noise. I was tapping my desk like the desk I sound anything like goat hoofs, because obviously we learn later he's a satyr. Like Philoctetes. I'm sorry. I am bad at pronouncing these names sometimes. I am bad at these sometimes. But y'all know what I'm talking about. Like the satyr dude that helped out Hercules. Or at least he did it in a Disney movie. Anyway, Percy isn't actually going to be coming back to Yancey Academy next year because, the whole the whole thing when Nancy got him, well, not expelled, because he did get to finish out the year there, but basically, like, you know, he's not allowed back next year to Yancey Academy, so like, he heads off. You know, he heads off. He's heading back home into Manhattan, where his mother's waiting for him. Yeah, Sally Jackson. Excuse me. Just had dinner. Excuse me. You know, and Grover's coming with him. And something happens to the bus, I guess, like engine broke down for a second. And they get off the bus, and across the street, you know, Percy sees these three old ladies knitting or whatever. And one of them has, like, the golden scissors, y'all know what I'm talking about, like. And Grover sees it too, and he's kind of freaking out, looking scared, and he's muttering all this crazy stuff, and then finally the bus is fixed. They're going back, you know, obviously with the Golden Sisters, they actually snipped a string or whatever. You know what they do. You know what those ladies do. If you don't agree with all, I keep wanting to call them prophets, but I don't think that's it. Whatever. No, you guys still know what I'm talking about. You know, the three lady. Whatever. Great. Now all I can think is a Disney movie. No. Basically, Percy and Grover back on the bus. Grover's like, he promised me that we'll walk to your apartment together, you know. And Percy kind of being weirded out at this point is kind of like, okay. And yeah, so this leads us into chapter 3. Lighting's kind of bad. Alright, anyway, chapter 3. Grover unexpectedly loses his pants. Without context, that sounds super weird, but bear with me. So Percy, admittedly, ditches Grover. You know, he heads home by himself. And at home, he finds his stepdad, Gabe Ugliano, or as we're gonna call him, because Percy does, Smelly Gabe. He's a jerk, basically, you know, he's an asshole. And, basically, you get the idea, you know, like, Percy doesn't like Gabe, Gabe doesn't like Percy, and then his mother comes, you know, and, you know, obviously his mom, Sally, is, like, very excited to see Percy again, because, you know, he was at a boarding school, you know, so, like, you know. Yeah, they go to Percy's room to catch up, and Percy, you know, in his room, seems Gabe's taken over his room, Smelly Gabe, because usually when Percy's not home for long periods of time, Smelly Gabe's stuff will just start piling up in Percy's room, like, as if Percy isn't even there. So yeah, and basically, you know, after they talk and about the school year and stuff. And Percy does not mention Mrs. Dodds. Sally says, well, guess what? We're gonna go have a weekend trip to Montauk, which is somewhere they like to go. Like, that's on the water. And on the water, they go there on the water, and like, something special about this place is this is basically where, like, Sally and Percy's biological father, who Percy does not know at all, obviously, you know. Well, yeah, I was about to say, why else would it be said that? Well, you know, technically it's totally true. Like, you can have a stepdad and still have known your biological father. You guys get what I mean, right? You get what I mean, right? And basically, at first, Gabe was like, what? No, you guys can't go to Montauk. No. But eventually, you know, I guess he gets there. So, like, I think Sally said something, but just, you know, they're off to Montauk, you know. They have a good time, and then there's a huge storm that night. No, there's a huge storm that night. And then there's a knock at the door. And there's Grover. Grover's at the door. But wait a minute. Where there was supposed to be, normal legs or whatever, legs and feet, were like little goat hooves, because he's a satyr. Obviously, Percy's just like, what the heck? But basically, Grover's like telling Sally and Percy, like, it's here, it's coming, we gotta get Percy out of here, and Sally's like, okay, so they get in the car, they're driving. Before this, though, of course, I think, Sally and Percy had to talk about his dad or whatever. But I mean, and Percy kind of thinks that his dad is like lost at sea or whatever. Anyway, I was gonna add that in there before I continue with their hurry down the road. Because that is. Well, I'm sorry. I'll start getting into chapter 4. Alright, let's just cut it off here. Alright. The actual section for chapter 4, because I just started, talking and, ended up talking about chapter 4, which is called My Mother Teaches Me Bullfighting. Oh, what a great mother-son bonding time. Bullfighting. That's okay. I was gonna say, that's completely normal, but I think maybe that's just people's things. I don't know. But in this context, they're hurrying through the terrible weather down the road. There's clearly something following. Then because there's a terrible storm and stuff, roads wet. You can barely see as she's driving. She crashes. Percy manages. Grover gets knocked out, and Percy and Sally are still conscious, though they're still awake. And Percy's kind of looking out the window or whatever. He's like, he sees something coming. He's like, wait a second, I know what that is. How is that real? A minotaur, obviously. Minotaur. The minotaur, I believe, is part lion, scorpion, something else. I'm just gonna assume you guys know what a minotaur is, because I can see it in my head, but I don't remember the exact different animals it is made up of, so I'm just gonna assume you guys know what a minotaur is. But anyway, Sally's trying to tell Percy, hey, look, you gotta run, you go right up that hill, and you'll be safe from the thing that's coming to the car. But Percy's like, no, I need to get Grover. We can't leave Grover here. So, Sally agrees, alright, fine, we'll get Grover out, even though the monster does not want me and Grover. It wants you, Percy. And obviously, Percy still is just like, what is going on? But, obviously, with the circumstances, he can't exactly stop and ask questions right this second. So, obviously, they're just doing what they can. Getting Grover up this hill where there is a tall, I believe, pine tree. If I'm wrong, I'll correct myself in a later section of this video. I believe it's the pine tree, though, and this is at the point where the monster, Minotaur, has caught up, and basically, long story short, it gets Sally and starts squishing her, but then she disappears in, just shimmer of gold. She disappears shimmer of gold. Obviously, Percy's a sink. Of course, Percy's thinking, this thing just killed my mom. And now it's coming for him. So, he's fighting it, and what do you know? He defeats it and gets the horn, the Minotaur's horn, as a prize. But of course, obviously, he's still he thinks his mom is dead. So that sucks, but hey, at least you get the horn. But basically, he manages to get himself and Grover, down the hill to this cabin that's past the hill with the pine tree. If it is a pine tree, like I said, I'll correct myself later, if I'm wrong. And this is when two people, before he kind of, passes out, he realizes that I've been saying Mr. Brenner this whole time? Oh, I'm so sorry. I've been saying Brenner this whole time. It's Brenner. Okay, I'm sorry. I can't read my own handwriting sometimes. I thought Brunner sounded wrong. I thought that sounded wrong. Brunner, I'm sorry. Basically, Brunner is some girl that he doesn't know who she looks like yet, named Annabeth, is there right before he passes out. Which leads us into chapter 5, where I guess I'm gonna have to stop saying, I'll get to stop saying Mr. Brunner, whatever anyway, but let's just go to chapter 5. Okay, so chapter 5 is called I Play Pinochle with a Horse. Now, granted, I'm going to say this before I get into what happens in chapter 5. I did not know what Pinochle was at all. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but I guess it's some sort of card game? Gambling, maybe? Tell me in the comments below. For some reason, I don't know what this is. I'm assuming it's some card game gambling that isn't poker like what Smelly Gabe, the stepdad likes playing. It's not poker, but I think it's similar. Basically, chapter 5, Percy spends some time being nursed back to health. By the girl, Annabeth, who's this, girl his age, has, blonde hair, and actually her blonde hair is, her being blonde, actually, I guess is important in a way, because, there's, the dumb blonde stereotype or whatever, actually. I don't think I have a funny story about that, and dumb blonde stereotype, but Annabeth is super duper smart, being the daughter of Athena. After all, she's the daughter of Athena. She's super smart, so she's breaking the stereotype or whatever. But anyway, the story that I just thought of. So I remember back last summer, I spent the whole summer and my hair dyed blonde. I'll leave a picture right here real quick. And I remember my mom was trying to talk to me do you know the different types of blonde and stuff? And I was like, do you know them? I was just as a joke, I was kind of just dumb blonde? And she's like, no. And she's like, no. Whatever. But anyway, I just thought that. Anyway, let's actually get to what this is, chapter 5. So this is basically when we get to learn a lot more about what's going on here. Turns out everything about Greek mythology is real. It did happen. And hey, Mr. Brunner, see, I didn't say Brunner that time. Brunner, he's actually a centaur named Chiron. I'm gonna say Chiron. I when I was reading the book in my head, I kept pronouncing it as Chiron. But then, there's the dude later, whose name is exactly the same except the I is an A. He works for Hades. And he actually did a whole pronunciation lesson. It would be it's pronounced as Charon or Karen or whatever. I was have I been pronouncing the centaur's name wrong this whole time then? Is it Chiron? So I'm just going to say Chiron because I might have been saying it wrong as I've been reading the book in the last few weeks. This whole time. But basically, this is when we learn some more. We get to meet the camp director, Mr. D, or also known as Dionysus. And he is one of Zeus's kids. He is a god. He's not he's not a demigod or whatever, half-blood or whatever. He is an actual god. He's I think he's a god of multiple things, but one of them is wine. And that is actually what led poor little Mr. D to being the camp director, because, as punishment for, I guess, being an alcoholic. Okay, yeah, sure, that's rich Zeus coming from, okay, I guess you and your two brothers had that promise, but let's be honest, you guys knocking up random Wonder Women. Just saying. Will you really be judging Mr. D for being an alcoholic, I guess? I mean, he even mentions that probation, obviously we know that in history, probation was, actually Zeus, punishing Mr. D, but anyway, as they are playing Pinochle, whatever the heck it's pronounced, Chiron tells Percy a lot, and then what's his name? And basically he tells him, yeah, this is a place for people like you who are half god, half person, to stay safe from monsters, learn to fight these girls, and then Percy's kind of like, well, then who's my godparent? I say godparent, like, it makes me sound like I'm saying, like, God, talk about godfathers and godmothers, you know what I mean? Like, which god is my dad, or whatever. And, like, Chiron is just like, well, we can't know that yet, they have to claim it, or whatever. So for now, he's going to cabin 11. So he'll be staying in cabin 11 until he's claimed by his godparent. Again, it makes it sound like I'm talking about godfathers or godmothers, but whatever, we'll just go to chapter 6 now. Alright, so chapter 6 is called I Become the Supreme Lord of the Bathroom. And so Annabeth is taking Percy around, and this is when we meet one of Ares' kids, and the other kids too, but we only get to actually know one of their names, and that is Clarice LaRue. I'm not a big fan of her, not because I dislike her, because she ends up being a bitch, but kind of more just like she's kind of annoying. So basically, she and a lot of other campers are really mad that Percy, of all people, was able to beat the Minotaur, and she ends up trying to dunk his head in the toilet at the public restroom at camp. But, oh my gosh, what is this? Oh, the water of the toilet, splashes out around and hits Clarice and the others. And that's basically all that you need to know, other than Annabeth seeing this magic or whatever. It was like, I need you to capture the flag, Percy. Like, okay, because she wasn't creepy like that. But, like, honestly, like, it's just this scene disgusts me, not because it's a bathroom. It was just, ew. So let's just go to the next chapter. Okay, so this one's gonna be really quick. Chapter 7. My dinner goes up in smoke. Aww. Percy, do you want an onion ring? Percy wants an onion ring? Someone burnt your dinner? You want an onion ring? Basically, tour's done. Percy, well, I'd say, yeah, we settled it. No, yes. He's sad. He's like, my mom disappeared at gold, shimmering, whatever the frick. But basically, he has his first dinner here at Camp Half-Blood, and then at the end, apparently he has to burn his leftovers for the gods or something. He's kind of just like, that's kind of weird. This looks very unappetizing. And like, I think it was Grover who said this. I think it was Grover. He was just like, oh no, they like it. Then like, right as Percy puts his own leftovers into the pile, where the aroma will be sent up to the Olympus gods, he smells something that definitely shouldn't have come out of it, like good food smells, like real good food smells. I don't remember any examples. I mean, I read chapter 7 so long ago. I mean, there's a reason why I wrote all this down. Basically, and yeah, that's it, basically. Although apparently there was an amphitheater sing-along. Yay! Oh, this is sing-along and not karaoke. Karaoke's like the Antichrist to me. But anyway, yeah. That's, like I said, really short chapter, which leads us into a much more action-packed chapter. Or I say action-packed, this more interesting chapter, which is chapter 8. Alright, chapter 8. I capture a flag. Or we capture a flag, one of the two. This is basically an event that happens, I don't know, weekly, 2 weeks, like, I think it's like weekly, an event that happens at Camp Half-Blood where all the different cabins, each cabin obviously being for the different gods, and there's also like 3 ones that are there are 3, actually 4, that are completely empty. But that's a little different, We'll get into that in a little bit. basically, in this chapter, Percy officially starts classes. He's terrible at everything. The only thing he's good at is canoeing, which again makes sense later. Definitely makes sense later because he has to do with water. And he actually he has sword fighting with Luke, camp counselor Luke, I like Luke, he was pretty cool. How could he betray him at the end? Anyway, I'll get into that later. Basically, I think, Percy, actually managed to disarm Luke, and, ultimately it was beginner's luck, I guess, or something. But, anyway, capture the flag. Annabeth has really, really, and actually a lot of other people too, have really, really been wanting to take the flag, or whatever, from the Ares cabin, because the Ares has been having it for forever, and after the bathroom incident, Annabeth is like, oh, Percy can help us. Percy could definitely help us. So basically, they're off into different teams. I believe only one cabin actually teamed up with Ares, but does Ares... I mean, when you hear the descriptions of these kids, and obviously just knowing that who Ares the god is, every time I say Ares, I keep thinking of the zodiac, but that's actually something different. That's even spelled different. There's an I when it comes to the zodiac, Ares. But Ares the god doesn't have an I in it. It's just Ares. Anyway, basically, capture the flag. Obviously, Clarice is still very salty about what happened in the bathroom. I would be too. It's disgusting. Oh my god, Percy, I know you didn't mean to, but why'd you gotta put that thought in my head covered in, ew. Anyway, basically, Clarice targets him. And while she's busy with him, for a while, he kind of is just, sitting, hanging around, with nothing to do, because he was told to go scout up by this water area, by by the shore. I mean, I think it's a lake or something. Anyway, it's some body of water. Eventually, Clarice shows up. There's a fight. He ends up jumping down into the water, and this is when weird stuff happens, because suddenly he feels much more awake. And the fight actually ends with him breaking Clarice's magic spear that was a gift from Ares, her dad, obviously. And at this point, Luke comes running up with people who are running by. They have the flag. They have the other team's flag. By the way, they were Team Blue, Ares, the Ares cabin, and the other cabin that joined them. I don't remember who at this exact moment. Maybe Demeter. I don't know. They are, they're Team Red, but Team Blue wins, Obviously, Clarice is mad about this. Of course you did. And, I believe, wins the game, Team Blue. Yeah, I believe this is the point where... Yeah, this is the point where a hellhound or something like that shows up or something, and then Chiron comes, saves the day, I think. Yeah, but anyway, basically at the end of the chapter, Percy's gone out of the water. Suddenly he feels tired again. One night he's tired again. And Annabeth shows up. She apparently was watching invisible the whole time. She has a Yankees baseball cap that can, when she wears it, turns her invisible. Which I believe she said was a gift from her mom. Why don't I get presents like that on my birthday? Mom! I'm not gonna scream right now. It's nighttime. Anyway, they better get me a magical Yankees baseball cap. Well, I mean, not the Yankees specific, but come on. Can I? Oh, I'm so glad I didn't fall on that. Alright, can I, be able to just turn invisible? Oh, okay, obviously you can still see me. Ugh, the lighting. Yeah, a while ago I got a comment with a suggestion for lighting, but, I don't know what to do. I'm gonna actually have to sit down and think about that one. Sometimes I'm lazy. So. Anyway, basically, Annabeth pushes him in the water, and something appears on his head. Percy obviously is like, "What the? What'd you push me in the water for?" Then he looks up to it. There's a trident, just like a picture of a trident, golden trident picture or whatever thing, hologram. I don't care. Above his head, and that's when everyone's like, "Wait a minute, his parent is one of the big three. You know, the ones that aren't supposed to have babies anymore." Poseidon, specifically. God of the sea, God of water, whatever. And horses, too. God of horses, too. Which is so random. It does feel random. But I digress. And that's where that chapter ends. Alright, so this is chapter 9. And it is called I Am Offered a Quest. Basically, it starts with Percy he keeps having this dream where he's on the beach and there's these two dudes in Greek togas or whatever, you know, whatever they wore back then, just fighting on the beach, like really going at it on the beach. Okay, now that sounds weird in my head. Okay, you know what I mean. They're fighting. They're angry at each other. So he's been having this dream. And he realizes because of this that Zeus's he learns that Zeus's master bolt, you know, one of his lightning bolts, you know, Zeus is known for the lightning bolts. What's he, the goddess? God of lightning, right? Like his master bolt, was stolen. And turns out, when he talks to Chiron's like, yeah, he thinks you stole him. Percy's like, what? No, I didn't. I didn't even know all you guys existed till a week ago or something. Let's say few weeks ago. No, he's only been here a week. But basically, this ultimately, Chiron's like, all right, well, I could tell you more, but first you need to officially accept the quest by going to talk to the Oracle. The Oracle is something that's up in. The Oracle is like a quest-giving entity or whatever that lives in the attic above. Well, one of the main buildings. And he goes there. She gives him a prophecy, he's like a prophecy giver, which is similar to the. Now I remember what they're called. They're not. I don't know why I kept saying prophets earlier. The three fates. The fates. Right? That's what they're called. Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm no longer dumb. But, basically gives a quest, and obviously he's kind of just like, yeah, because one of the last lines mentions that he's gonna be betrayed by one of his friends, and no one would be happy about hearing that, especially from something that literally is giving you a prophecy that will come true. So he does go bad down. He does tell Chiron and everything, and except for that, and ultimately, he has to go to the underworld because Chiron believes that Hades has stolen the Master Bolt, and obviously the underworld is. This was so funny to me. It's under Los Angeles. That just seems like so perfect to me, but and basically Grover, being a satyr, has to come along because satyrs are like guides for heroes, which Percy basically is. He's a hero. And Annabeth will be coming too, by the way. Annabeth is coming. And that leads us into chapter 10. Alright, chapter 10 is called I Ruin a Perfectly Good Bus. What a mean thing to do, Percy. But anyway, it's time to leave. Luke is there, because he and Percy get along and they're buddies. I'm sure they are. And he gives him these flying shoes. He gives him these flying shoes. like Hermes, the god Hermes has, as a gift, and Chiron gives him the pen sword from chapter 1. Turns out, well, it does actually have a name. I'm just gonna call it by its, easier to pronounce nickname, Riptide, because of course you name your weapons. What a normal thing to do. But then again, you know what, in mythology, usually weapons seem to have, like, a mind of its own, even in, like, fairy tales, like, in the King Arthur story, like, Excalibur seems to, like, be a thing of itself, of its own, like, a mind of its own sometimes, in some versions at least. But anyway, I'm getting off track. Argus is like a security guard, and he basically drives Percy, Grover, and Annabeth into the city so they can head off on their own. Now, while obviously the easy thing would be to get a plane ride to LA, that is not a smart decision, because since Zeus does believe Percy has it, since he does believe that Percy has the bolt, if Percy were to go into his territory, which obviously is the sky, he would just make sure the plane never came down properly, you know? Like, maybe, just a plane crash or something, you know? So, like, obviously they have to go by foot. I mean, you know what? Whatever. Also, they do have money, and, like, normal, like, mortal money, obviously, you know, just, like, US dollars, given this to USA, and that the story takes place in. And they also get money of the gods, which I believe is pronounced as drachmas. They're, like, these gold coins. And, they have these for money. And anyway, after, you know, they're in the city, and Grover actually tells Percy something to help him feel better, because Percy's still feeling down about his mom or whatever, and, like, you know, and he kind of looks, you know, Grover kind of looks at Percy, he's like, hey, you know, your mother marrying Gabe was actually for you, because she hoped that his mortal smell or whatever would keep monsters away, and it kind of sort of maybe has, you know. And, like, obviously they don't really make Percy feel that much better, but anyway, later they are on a bus, and that's when 3 old ladies get on, and one of them looks weirdly familiar. Oh wait, it's Mrs. Dodds, and obviously Percy's looking at Annabeth like, dude, you literally told me that they wouldn't show up for the rest of that she wouldn't show up again for the rest of my lifetime, and, you know, and Annabeth is like, that's if you're lucky, and obviously. But weirdly, you know, Mrs. Dodds and her 2 sisters, because this time she has 2 others with her, they sit at the front of the bus. They aren't coming to the back, though. But then eventually, you know, they do come to the back. And this is when, by the time they got into New Jersey, and Percy is invisible because Annabeth gave him her baseball cap so he could be invisible, so he could get away, because Annabeth was like, hey, you know, they want you, not us. So, now obviously these, Mrs. Dodds, what Mrs. Dodds is, she's a Fury, which is basically a servant to Hades, god of the underworld. And, but apparently, I guess, like, you know, his names have power or whatever in this franchise, and many other franchises, actually. Yes, I think Voldemort now. Anyway, you know, they're often referred to as the kindly ones or whatever. But we're just gonna call them Fury, because, you know what? They're not real. It's not like one's gonna show up back there by, you know, back there by those pictures. If I say Fury, so whatever. But basically, you know, confrontation breaks out, and it seems Mrs. Dodds and her sisters get kind of angry, Annabeth and Grover, and eventually Percy's like, well, I gotta save them, I can't just run for it. So, you know, fight breaks out, bus ends up crashing, and after escaping, the trio runs into the woods of New Jersey, which leads us to the next chapter, chapter 11. Chapter 11 is called We Visit the Garden Gnome Emporium. So basically, they end up coming across a place called Auntie M's Gnome Emporium. And they meet the owner, Auntie M, who, from the looks of it, seems like a woman from the Middle East, and Percy assumes this by her accent. Not just that though, like she like dresses the same way. She's all the way covered, and honestly, this if it isn't obvious who Auntie M really is, I'm just gonna say it now. Like it was pretty obvious that it was Medusa, because I mean, because like she has like snake hair, obviously that can like turn you into stone, petrify you, whatever. So of course she's gotta be like covering everything basically, to hide that she's Medusa. But anyway, the three of them lied, and their orphans part of the circus or whatever, and they are hungry. And so she gives them, she lets them in, let them some hamburgers. But then Auntie M's like, I want a photo. Let's have some photos, because I do like carving stone and stuff, So and you guys have such sweet little faces. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, Auntie M, like, when Auntie M was talking about photos, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, girl was sadly like Jeffrey Dahmer. I am not gonna lie. Because obviously, the serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer would, a few times he would trick his victims into coming with him by being like, I'll pay you for some photos or whatever, but that's not, but anyways, I'm just saying, like, Auntie M, like, who would ever listen to this woman, honestly, let's be honest. I don't care if it's not, if, like, like, reference images for, like, stone carvings or whatever is not nearly as, but, like, anyway. And, this is when, but anyway, like, at this point, Annabeth really wants to leave. Like, she's getting a weird vibe, and Percy's like, oh, come on, it's only a photo, because, like, he's feeling comfortable after those hamburgers. Hey, speaking of hamburgers, it's my dinner tonight with hamburgers. This is when she turns into Medusa, and there's a fight. And Percy gets to behead her, and honestly, like, even after, like, time spent so far, like, Percy and Annabeth, like, don't really get along. And Annabeth is like, well, it's because our parents don't get along, which, like, that's a stupid reason, but okay. But anyway, basically, Percy ends up mailing Medusa's head up to Mount Olympus or whatever, which I guess puts Annabeth and Grover in shock. I wouldn't know why. I don't really get that. But hey, you know what? That was basically the end of the chapter. They do take stuff from Auntie M's place, though. I believe they take food. But this leads us into chapter 12, so. Alright, chapter 12 is called... It is called We Get Advice from a Poodle. Yeah, that's right. A poodle. Because, of course, being a satyr, Grover could talk to animals. I mean, he's always half animal, half animal, And basically, so the trio is camping in the woods because got nowhere to stay. And before going to sleep, Percy talks to Grover about why he wants a searcher's license, which to get that, he obviously needs to successfully help. He needs to successfully help in a hero on their quest, and he failed 5 years ago with a group that was coming to Camp Half-Blood and wanted him turned into a tree, which is actually the, I believe, pine tree, that is on Half-Blood Hill. But anyway, and the topic of Pan comes up, and this guy's basically like a king to the satyrs, and he's been lost for like a very long time, and while everyone else seems to think he's dead, satyrs believe he's still out there, and Grover wants to be able to get a searcher's license so he can go try and find Pan. And Percy goes to sleep, and he has a dream where he's at a pit. There's like this evil voice coming from the pit, and he thinks it's Hades. He thinks this voice is Hades, begging him to help him get up or something. But then Percy wakes up, and he's like, and the other two are already up. Annabeth's like making breakfast or whatever with food they took from Auntie M's No Emporium, and Grover's talking to a runaway poodle who agreed to go back to their owner because there was a $200 reward for the return of the poodle. Because the poodle ran away, and Percy, Grover, and Annabeth obviously need money, so the poodle wants to help them out. So there you go. There's your money problem solved. Since you lost all your stuff in the burning, crashed bus earlier. Yeah, right. That's actually true. They did lose all their stuff there. Percy's probably so glad he didn't take his Minotaur horn with him and left that in cabin 3, I believe. At cabin 3, that is Poseidon's. I don't know why at first I assumed that like one of the 3 cabins was gonna be Hades, when wait a minute, Hades is basically an outcast. Why would they give him a cabin? Even if Hades has actually had kids up until the agreement between the big 3 that they would never have any kids after World War II happened. Though clearly 2 of them didn't listen because the girl who's now a pine tree was Zeus's daughter, and obviously Percy is Poseidon's son. But but apparently the other of the 3 cabins, there's Zeus and Poseidon. Apparently it's Hera. Yeah, it's Hera or whatever. And I was like, to me, I'm just like, okay. Okay, I mean, what if Hades happened to have a kid? And what if that kid just happened to show up at camp one day, and, like, everyone's like, oh my god, wait, you're Hades' kid or whatever? And, like, there's no... And now, there's no cabin for them. What are they gonna do, stay with Hermes' kids? I guess we're staying in cabin 11. Anyway, that was a tangent. But honestly, that's literally all that happened in chapter 12, like the poodle. And they get their money, and now they have a train ticket to go to Denver, Colorado, which gets them which definitely at that point, you're definitely more on the western side of the U.S., way closer to L.A. than New Jersey is. So like, that was definitely a long train ride. So let's just get to chapter 13. Alright, so chapter 13 is called I plunged to my death. Hey. Lucky? I'm just kidding. Alright, whatever. I'm kidding. Dark joke. Alright, chapter 13. They're riding a train. Annabeth tells Percy kind of a bit of her life story of her dad, her mortal parent. And, she basically ran away when she was like 7. And then after, she basically tells him how she ran away when she was 7 or whatever. Because her dad actually married a woman who had 2 kids already, and like basically because of Annabeth, like monsters kept coming, and that woman was just basically done with Annabeth. And so she ran away when she was 7, and then Percy tells her about his dream about Hades. But if I remember correctly, Annabeth's like, sure. Annabeth seems a little nervous about hearing about this dream because clearly she's thinking that may not be Hades I heard in the pit, but okay. But basically, they get off at a stop for a break. The train taking like a few hour break, and they go to the arch. They go to the arch, which is a monument, a U.S. monument, and basically, and while they're here, Annabeth says she really wants to be an architect, and Percy's like, really, an architect? You? Because, really, her of all people? Would you even be able to sit still long enough to, architect stuff or whatever? She's like, hey, look, children of Athena are expected to be creators, and you know what? Fair. Architect is creating, you're basically designing buildings and other kinds of structures that would go in the same category as buildings, basically. I honestly was surprised that of all the creator careers, she would want architect. But then again, I mean, I guess, whatever. Anyway, they go up the arch through the elevator, and when going up, they were with this big lady and her aggressive little chihuahua. And then, they're gonna go back down, but there wasn't enough room for all three of them. Percy was left alone up at the top to catch the next elevator down, and obviously Grover and Amp nervous about leaving him alone, but he's like, it's fine. No, it's not fine, because it turns out Big Lady is, I'm probably gonna butcher his name, Echnida. She basically, creates a lot of monsters, she breeds and raises the monsters and stuff. It turns out Chihuahua, not Chihuahua, it's a chimera. There's I guess they're kind of dog-like, especially considering apparently Percy thought it was a Chihuahua, so I guess it's kind of like dog-like. It can breathe fire anyway, like a dragon. And he ends up in a fight with this thing, and there's some people up there, and there's this thing where literally you can have all this magic stuff happening. If there's a human watching, there's a mist that makes them see something else, which an example later would be Percy was there's an example later where Percy was actually holding a sword. Yeah, he was holding a sword or something, and but mortals saw it as a gun. So there's that. But basically, ultimately, something gets the chimera kind of gets him with its tail. It has a poisonous tail or whatever, and he's slowing down, because he's poisoned. And there's basically a hole in the ground, and he can see beneath is water, and he's just oh wow, might as well. I can't win this fight anyway. And so he kind of jumps down the hole to get away from Echnida or whatever her name is, and the chimera, and he hits the water. And this is where the chapter ends, him jumping. Out of context, that sounds sad, actually. Out of context, that sounds sad. Percy, you're really making some big milestones here, or so the name of chapter 14 says when it says, I become a known fugitive. That's right, the explosion, or whatever, of the, that caused the hole that he was able to jump through. That actually, he actually does get blamed for that. But first, he's fallen. He hits the water. He's pretty sure he's gonna die. But that's weird. Water didn't kill him. He's just slowly sinking. And he meets a messenger of sorts. And he thinks this woman was his mom at first. I guess they look similar. And considering who this lady is, who we know this lady is later, she's Poseidon's court or whatever. If she really looks anything like Sally, Poseidon, do you have a type? Appearance, as far as appearance goes, do you have a type? But anyway, I'm not okay. I didn't say there's any romantic relations between this woman and Poseidon, but we can only assume, right? We can assume maybe, given how the Greek gods to act in these stories. Because oh my god, imagine these gods sleeping around so much that they're able to fill a whole camp with their kids. You have a camp full of these dudes' kids because they can't stop sleeping around. Anyway. So basically, this messenger tells Percy, hey, well, your dad Poseidon wants you to go to the Santa Monica Pier, which conveniently, that Santa Monica is in LA, so at least that doesn't really take him out of the way at all. And basically, he's great, but, and before he surfaces, he retrieves Riptide because he actually lost that. It fell through the hole up at the arch last chapter because of the Chimera or whatever. And so he gets riptide, he goes back up, he meets up with Annabeth and Grover again, and he sees that the people he really wanted, which I don't know, it's just this dude was like so hell-bent on protecting these people. It's like, okay, look, obviously there's nothing wrong with wanting to protect people from like danger or whatever, but given how these kind of stories go, this dude's gonna develop some serious hero complex. I mean, it happened to Harry Potter, like, it might happen to you too, Percy. Like I said, like, there's so many similarities. Sometimes I was reading this book, and I can't help but just be like, this is a lot like Harry Potter. But, anyway, before anything else could happen, because obviously Percy's a wanted fugitive now, he sees on the TV, everyone's blaming him for the arch getting destroyed. The three of them hurry back to the train to keep heading off. They keep heading off towards LA, which leads us to chapter 15. Alright, chapter 15 is called A God Buys Us Cheeseburgers, and I'm gonna be honest with you, kid, these guys get nothing better than cheeseburgers. Like, okay, y'all are struggling to get some food, but like, I'm telling you, between Medusa and the god that we're gonna meet momentarily that buys them cheeseburgers, really, you guys need a little more variety of food. You can't just live on burgers. But basically the next day, when they're off the train the next day, like, Annabeth brings them to a car wash, and there they're able to use a rainbow to hopefully contact Chiron to tell them, what's happened so far, what's going on, and stuff. But instead, they see Luke. And something, I guess an approaching car distracts Grover and Annabeth, so Percy ends up talking to Luke instead. And, after that, they end up going to, they end up going to a fast food joint in hopes of somehow getting food, even though they have no money again. They have no money again. And right as they're about to, basically get caught by the waitress who's like, are you sure you kids got money? And this is a little sus. A biker shows up, and he's like, I'll buy the food. Tabs on me or whatever, I'm not gonna lie, for some reason, I must be thinking of a later book or something. I heard about one of the later books, because I don't know why the heck I thought Hermes, of all people, was gonna show up for some reason. But no, obviously Hermes, that guy is not about to show up as a freaking biker, like a biker, gangster biker, whatever, I don't care. It's Ares, Clarice's dad, and something that you definitely learn as the book goes on is each god has like a unique aura, and Ares makes Percy experience anger. I'm pretty sure he had those already, but whatever. He just like feels angry when around Ares because that's the aura that this god gives off. And basically Ares, oh my god, I spelled it wrong here too. I spelled it as the Zodiac, but I do know later I spelled it correctly. But yeah, see, like I said, me being like, couldn't help but thinking of the Zodiac. Anyway, so basically, okay, we all know Aphrodite, right? Apparently Ares and Aphrodite are dating, but Aphrodite's also married to a different god. I'm not going to pretend to know how to pronounce his name or even be able to attempt to, because that's just like, look, I already struggle with a lot of these names. I don't want, I'm not even going to try with that one, but this is the one that starts with an H. He's like a blacksmith. And Ares and Aphrodite went on a date at an abandoned water park, but he forgot something back there. Ares forgot his shield or whatever. He forgot his shield, like his symbol, which is basically his symbol, I guess. Symbol power, and he needs Percy, Grover, and Annabeth to go and retrieve it for him. So they go, and turns out, Aphrodite's husband left a trap there, hoping to catch Ares and Aphrodite in the act of cheating on him. You know, she's cheating on her husband with Ares, but excuse me. But all they catch is Percy and Annabeth trying to escape, and Grover obviously too. They get back, and as promised by Ares, because obviously, you know, they didn't just go there just because, although Annabeth probably would have. You know, Ares is like, look, I'll get you a ride all the way to LA, or whatever. So that's the only reason they really went. Go get a shield for him. Also, this is when we learned that Annabeth is deathly afraid of spiders, so there's that. Similar to Hermione, more like similar to Ron. I'm just kidding. Alright, So basically, yeah, they're going back to Ares because now they have to get that ride he promised, which leads us into chapter 16. Alright, chapter 16. We take a zebra to Vegas. Not very accurate, since they never actually ride said zebra, but basically the ride Ares got them was with what they later learned were some sketchy dudes smuggling wild animals across the U.S., which included an albino lion, a zebra, and I believe an antelope. But believe me, these guys are getting mistreated or whatever, and personally I wasn't like too emotional over that. I was just like, okay, that's probably good, you know. Being the good people that, and Satyr, that our main characters are, that they're gonna set them free. I mean, you know what, anyone probably would, but I would. But at the same time, maybe I wouldn't, and not because, like, I wouldn't feel bad for these animals or whatever, because I think I'm gonna get risk getting eaten by a lion. I mean, look, I love lions, they're my favorite animal, but I'm gonna risk that. But anyway, ultimately, when they stop in Las Vegas, they, you know, after seeing the mistreatment of these three animals, when they stop in Las Vegas, our main character set the animals loose, and now I guess they're out of a ride the rest of the way to LA. So what they do is they're walking the streets trying to figure out what they're gonna do next. You know, they're trying to figure out what they're gonna do next, and they come across this casino, and they're invited in. They get, like, you know how, like, casinos have, like, those cards or whatever? You know, like, similar to, like, arcade, you know, like, those, similar to, like, arcades, and so, obviously, there actually is an arcade in this casino, and I assume there are in all, because most casinos, but, you know, they get one of those cards, and it's, like, infinite money on that thing, like, too good to be true. Like, Percy even's like, dude, they think we're like some millionaires' kids or something. Of course, eventually Percy realizes, wait a minute, this is a trap. And he starts talking to one of these other kids there, and the kid's like, you know, he's asking the kid, what year is it? Oh, 1977. What? And Percy's like, oh no, oh no. So he drags Annabeth and Percy. Percy drags Percy. Well, Percy basically drags himself out of the state he was in. But yeah, Percy gets Annabeth, gets Grover, be like, hey, this is a trap, we gotta get out of here. They get it. So they end up running out. And believe me, this casino was nice, you know? Nice hotel room. Got those cards as I mentioned. Got the games. I mean, Grover was loving this one game that was basically hunting reversed, where the animals got to hunt the hunters or whatever. Like, Grover obviously is an environmentalist or whatever, being a satyr. But, yeah, so, and Percy quickly finds a newspaper, be like, oh gosh, how long were we in there? They've been in there for 5 days. Only got 1 day until the summer solstice, which is the deadline before, and I haven't really brought this up. I have brought up solstice, but I haven't brought up the importance of it. Basically, if Zeus doesn't get his lightning bolt back by summer solstice, there's gonna be World War III. Yay. Not yay. But anyway, this leads us into chapter 17. Chapter 17, we shot for waterbeds. Now I'm gonna tell you right now, I have no clue what a waterbed is. I actually had to search it up on my phone. I had to search it up because I had no clue what a waterbed is. Like, I've heard of them before. I've heard the phrase before, but I was like, what is a waterbed? So I had searched it up, and apparently, if you'll give me a second, well, I'll get to talk about the actual chapter in a second. Oh, shut up, screen rat. These are water beds. They're basically mattresses that have water in them. And okay, I know the lighting's weird, but you can just barely see the images, right? You get what I'm saying. I'm assuming a lot of you know what water beds are, unlike me. So basically, after getting out of the casino, our trio, our main characters, get a taxi all the way to LA. At first, obviously, this taxi driver's like, y'all do know how much money it's gonna be, right? And Annabeth or whatever's like, you did take casino cards, right? It's like, yeah. And so she gives him the one they got from the evil casino place, whatever it was called. It wasn't called evil casino place. That'd be funny. Like, could you imagine the most obvious sign, whatever. Like, I keep getting distracted in this video, but anyway, they get there, specifically to Santa Monica Pier, because, of course, Poseidon wants Percy to go there. So Percy kind of just, like, being like, okay, we're here at the Santa Monica Pier. He, gets down to the water. He actually goes in the water. And the woman from the woman from Colorado up here, she's I believe the way it's pronounced is Nereid, something like that. And she... basically she talks to him and gives him a little gift. She gives him a gift that's basically, I guess, from his father Poseidon, which are these pearls that if you smash them at your feet, they will help you out of whatever situation you're in. And she gives him 3 specifically. But back on land in the LA streets, Percy and the other 2 run into some kitty gang or whatever. Percy is about to attack them with Riptide, but then right as he slashes at the gang leader, he remembers, wait a minute, his weapon doesn't work on mortals, as the god-made weapons don't actually work on mortals. They just go through them. And so they end up getting chased into this waterbed. Into this waterbed shop, where we meet a dude named Krusty. Oh, I guess he's... Oh, disgusting. Okay, that's not actually his real name. But I could not pronounce his real name. So I'm gonna have to call him Krusty. Seems like a normal guy at first. I mean, huge, but... maybe he's Hagrid. Maybe he's like Hagrid from Harry Potter. We found Hagrid, guys. We found him. He just has a terrible name now. Nope, turns out actually this guy is a actual giant. And he ends up basically Grover and Annabeth get trapped in water beds, and Percy, being like, I don't know what to do, like, tries to he basically ends up manipulating Krusty, and it's basically like, because basically Krusty's plan is if the waterbed has to be a perfect length to the person lying on it. So obviously the ropes that are magically holding Grover and Annabeth to different waterbeds right now are literally stretching them. And basically, like, Percy ends up tricking Krusty into sitting on one and laying down, and then Percy does a little whatever thing you gotta do to make the ropes appear, and then Krusty's like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, oh, you won't be fitted for your waterbed, and then he ends up beheading the guy. So, like, Percy, you really like beheading people. I mean, you know what? Okay, with Medusa, I was like, well, that's what you have to do to defeat Medusa. Like, that's literally how you defeat Medusa. You behead her, but now this guy, like Percy, I think you have an obsession here. It's like, I'm telling you, if in the next couple of books he continues to behead monsters, I don't know what I'm gonna say to that. Okay, look, I'm not shaming him, obviously. Come on, go ahead. Behead the monsters. But anyway, he ends up freeing his friends, and that leads into chapter 18. Chapter 18, which is called... Chapter 18 is called Annabeth's Disobedience School, and, Annabeth's Disobedience School, she needs it. Don't get me wrong, I did like Annabeth well enough, but, anyway, so basically the trio goes to this recording studio called DOA Recording Studios. I mean, obviously, it's the entrance to the underworld. Like, very on-the-nose name, but hey, why not? And they meet Karen. And I mentioned Karen earlier because he has a similar name to Chiron. And you know how Percy has dyslexia? It's Annabeth too, but like, you know what I mean. This is how Karen realizes, wait a minute, these kids are not actually dead. You guys are alive. Like, he shouldn't have figured that out by their fake story of how they died or whatever, because like, oh my gosh. Like, you really think this dude's supposed to believe that you all three of you happen to drown in the same bathtub? That's literally the story they gave. I'm telling you, if I was Karen, I'd be like, that's kind of a sus story. I don't think you guys are dead. Alright, but anyway. Basically, they do talk Karen and Chiron, or Charon, or whatever. Karen. They talk him into letting them down. And Percy promises, hey, look, when I confront Hades, I'll mention maybe a pay raise for you when we go down there or whatever. So they get down there, and when they get down there, they see something that looks like airport security. And there's 3 lines. One that leads to the fields of Asphodel, which is basically like where the average Joe goes. Then there's the one that leads to the field of punishment or whatever. There's a path that leads there, and like that's basically where the bad people go. It's hell, basically. And then there's Elysium, which is basically heaven, where all the goodest of the goods go. But, where the heroes go. Anyways, so above the entrance to where the asphodel fields are, is Cerberus. And like I said earlier, Cerberus, that dog is freaking adorable. Like, y'all, that dog is adorable. I really do think that dog is adorable. So what if it's like a Rottweiler that happens to have 3 heads and is like bigger than 2 elephants or whatever? Like, it's adorable. I mean, Percy might not have been able to get his attention with the stick, but Annabeth does with a red bouncy ball. And that thing was adorable. I'll say that a lot now. I did like Cerberus. He's a cute doggy. I want one now. I want a Cerberus. Alright. Basically, they get by. And they reach some metal detectors, which, you remember how Luke gave Percy, those flying shoes, but he ends up giving him the Grover to use instead? Remember that? Yeah. Because those are magic items, the metal detector that the 3 of them passed through kind of realized it, noticed it, was like, oh, magic items. And so the chapter ends with them running off, and this leads us into chapter 19. Alright, so chapter 19 is when we really get to see more of the underworld. It is called We Find Out the Truth, sort of. That's right. Plot twist. Not like it wasn't kind of obvious anyway. I mean, like, especially for people who actually know anything about Greek mythology, obviously I know a bit about Hades, and like, look, he doesn't even like his job, bitter or not. Like, why would he want a war, which would just mean more dead people coming into his underworld, which is exactly the point he gives later. But first, going through the fields of Asphodel, like, suddenly Grover's flying shoes go all crazy, and it's dragging him to the same exact dark pit that Percy saw in his dreams. He has been having multiple dreams, by the way. Like, he's had other dreams, too, that I haven't talked about that have to do with the pit. And, this is the same one. And, luckily, just in time, they're able to save Grover, but the shoes do go in the pit. And, they quickly run away before whatever is in the pit is able to draw them in. And, excuse me. And, they make it to Hades' palace. And there he says he never stole the lightning bolt. And that it was actually Percy. Because, hey, Percy, remember how Ares, and I know I didn't say this, but Ares had given him a backpack back at that fast food joint? Remember how Ares gave you a backpack? Well, did you know there was a lightning bolt in there? And obviously Hades thinks Percy really did have it this whole time, and that the only reason Percy came at all is because he wants his mother back. Which is true. Part of Percy's motivation for going here to the underworld was not really anything to do with the lightning bolt. It was he wants his mom back, because, wait, underworld. It's like one stop. It's like a stop, you can get people back there. I mean, it's happened before in Greek stories, the Greek mythology, so, Percy could totally get Sally back. Basically, yeah, it turns out lightning bolt, the bolt is actually in his backpack. He realizes, wait, I need to get back to Olympus. But turns out, Zeus's bolt wasn't the only thing stolen back at the winter solstice. And the other thing stolen was Hades' helm. But Hades didn't ask for help or anything because he's already an outcast. Like, why would the gods of Olympus help him? Poor guy. I actually feel bad for him. Because he isn't actually evil in this, as he is portrayed in cinema. He actually isn't evil. Honestly, he kind of, in this, at least in this book, he kind of felt just a moody, gothy guy, a goth dude. He seemed like a gothy guy, He seemed emo. He's basically emo. So, are you okay? Alright. But anyway, Hades tries to make a deal, being like, hey, you give me that bolt, I'll give you back Sally. Oh look, it's your mom. Right there in front of you. Do you want your mom back? Well, give me that bolt, give me that lightning bolt, kid. Let's go. Oh, okay, yeah, please. But in the end, the trio escapes with the pearls. Because they were like, okay, we're gonna come back for the bomb another time. Girl, we can't agree on this because we only have 3 pearls. But if we're all of us to get out, including with Mummy Dearest, we would need 4. So, but anyway, ultimately they escape and head back up into the Santa Monica shore, which leads us into chapter 20, where we see who the real-ish villain is. Alright, so chapter 20 is called I Battle My Jerk Relative, because, hey, you know what? I mean, obviously, if you don't know the plot, you're looking at that chapter, in the table of contents page, Zeus? No. Ares! God of War! Kinda obvious that he wants war. Why anyone thought it was Hades? I don't know why. Because honestly, I don't care if y'all got a bias against Hades or not. Who out of all of y'all, all you gods, up there in Olympus, or down in the underworld, or even out in the sea? Actually, you know what? No, never mind. Poseidon actually lives. I mean, yeah, sure, he controls the sea, but he does live in Olympus. Never mind. Olympus or Hades down there, let's be honest. Out of all of them, who the hell would... okay, y'all know what word I really want to say, but I can't really on YouTube, but so I'm just gonna say hell instead of the rules, because I can't say the curse I want to say. No, but who else other than the literal god of war that would want World War III? Obviously, Ares. So basically, Percy and him end up fighting, and there's mortals watching, but because of the whole mist thing, they're like, oh yeah, that guy's holding a shotgun and Percy's holding a rifle or whatever the frick. And obviously, Percy only ended up with the bolt because he was, Ares, he was the one that gave him the backpack. But anyway, yeah, they ended up battling it out. And then afterwards, something stops Ares from giving a killing blow. like something does. And what do you know? Percy wins. And the Furies, you know, who were actually in Hades' palace, by the way, obviously including Mrs. Dodds. Like, literally, I guess Percy's always gonna think as that one particular Fury of the three, like, as Mrs. Dodds. I guess we're just referring to her as that forever and ever. Excuse me. Basically, they come down and, like, obviously, Ares did not just have had the bolt. He actually had Hades' helm as well. Like, he had that as well. And, so, obviously, like, you know, Percy obviously gets the helm now, has the helm now, and so he gives the Furies that, and something I didn't mention last clip was, basically, like, Hades, obviously, because he thought that Percy had his, helm, was like, hey, give me the helm, I'll bring out your mother, or whatever. Like, that was actually a deal that he did make. And so there's that. But anyway, with all that done, they have to get to New York. You know, Percy has to get to New York quickly before anything could happen. And, he does the risky thing, you know, that they didn't do to get to LA in the first place because Zeus owns the sky. They get on an airplane. Oh yeah, and also he's not a fugitive anymore because his name was cleared up when everyone was like, wait, you were controlled by that mean, scary-looking dude, gangster biker dude. And it was actually back then because, you know, Ares is kind of a mean, gruff guy, you know, and the waitress that was kind of sus with the kids earlier, you know, at the fast food joint, thought that he was kind of sus, so I made that backed up the story anyway. Basically, his name's clear too. So, like, they're on the plane, headed home, which leads us into chapter 21 of 22. Chapter 21 is called I Set on My Tab, and after a safe ride across the country, which Percy, Annabeth, and Grover are all surprised about because, you know, this is Zeus's territory. Zeus doesn't know the truth yet. But, anyway, basically, when they land, Percy tells the other two, go back to Half-Blood Hill, and they do, because he, you know, this is the end of the quest. This is supposed to be only him now, you know, he has to go to Olympus. So he goes to the Empire State Building, he goes up to floor 600, and he's at Olympus. And he goes to Zeus's castle, where Zeus and Poseidon are there, sitting in their thrones. And he tells them the entire truth, and returns the lightning bolt. And Zeus decides not to kill him or whatever. And he says, "You better be gone when I come back from cleaning, you know, the mortal smells or whatever the frick, off my bolt." But before he goes, you know, before Percy leaves Olympus, he talks to his dad, Poseidon, because Poseidon was there, and, you know, they have a little chat about, you know, he is the dad, and turns out Sally's waiting at home. Mom's alive again. And Percy's like, wait, what? And Poseidon explains, well, you know, you did return Hades' helm, and even Lord of the Dead has to repay debts. So yeah, your mom's waiting for you. Also, there will be a package waiting in your room. And so yeah. And so basically, he goes home. He sees his mom, he sees Gabe, and, you know, he still haven't seen his mom gets it. And they end up, and obviously Gabe is not at all happy, especially after all the stuff that happened with all the future stuff. He's like, yay, he's finally gonna be gone. Percy's gonna leave. Percy's not coming back. But no, Percy's back. And it's basically, ultimately, you know, Gabe is like, get out. But before that, Percy before Percy leaves, you know, he and Sally go to, you know, Percy's room to talk alone in a quiet area. And that's where they see the package, and Percy recognizes the package immediately. It's the one he sent to Olympus that holds Medusa's head. And he realizes, we can turn my stepdad into a stone statue! Which, I mean, Yay, because Gabe is kind of annoying. I wouldn't say I dislike him. I don't hate him. I know obviously he's supposed to be hateable, but he just comes off as more annoying to me personally. Like, Gabe's just more annoying to me. But anyway, Sally ultimately is like, no, you do not have to do this for me, and so Percy leaves, and literally the book, like, the book literally says that as he's leaving, like, Sally looks like she's thinking about how Gabe would look as a stone statue. So, I mean, yeah, and I mean, see where that goes in chapter 22. Alright, the final chapter, chapter 22. Prophecy comes true. And so he's back at Half-Blood, Camp Half-Blood. Obviously, having finished the quest, he's being celebrated and whatnot. And turns out Gabe, his stepdad, disappeared. And Sally got a lot of money from selling a lifelike statue of Gabe. And now she gets to pursue what she's always wanted, which is a writing career. She wants to write. So she gets to go to college, and she did offer during the year, since, while you can't stay year-round at Camp Half-Blood, it is technically a summer camp, she did be like, hey, look, I have a spot for you at a school if you want it during the school year, But, he ends up not answering for a very long time. He puts it off, as does he put off whether or not he's going to stay at Camp Half-Blood throughout the year. So yeah, so basically he spends his time practice fighting and stuff. And the last day he decides to take his mind off things by practice fighting, and he runs into Luke, and Luke invites him to go to the woods, I guess, monster hunting or whatever. They end up finding no monsters. They go to the water. Turns out Luke's a real jerk. He's an asshole. He betrays. Turns out he was behind everything. He stole the bolt, and then he made it as far as, New Jersey or something, when Ares got him, it tracked him down, but because Ares loves war, he was able to convince Ares of this, and then, obviously, we know that, Ares put the bolt in a bag and gave the bag to Percy, and helm. Ares actually kept the helm, though. But anyway, it was Luke. Luke wants to bring back Kronos, who I have not mentioned, but Kronos is Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades' father, who they basically, I can't say killed, because you can't kill Kronos, just like you can't kill God, you can't kill Titans, so, they did defeat him, and he just, he's actually the voice that Percy was hearing in the pit. Luke thinks the world would be better if Kronos rules or whatever, and he's also really bitter about the quest he had been given. It's how he got a scar, and it was a quest that Hercules had already done a very long time ago, and he's mad at his dad for not thinking up of a better thing for him to do, and then he couldn't even finish it. But ultimately, Luke sends this very poisonous scorpion or whatever the heck it was after Percy, and then disappears forever. Or at least disappears to the rest of this book. But basically, the scorpion gets Percy. He's dying. Not even the water is healing him like it usually does. And he ends up having to be nursed back to health after some treants or whatever find him dying in the woods, hurrying back. And ultimately, he tells Chiron and everyone else what happened. And they're like, alright. And Chiron's like, alright, I gotta go tell Olympus. So he goes off to Olympus. Wow. Turns out Annabeth took the advice that Percy gave her earlier about, they have been talking on and off about her family throughout this whole time. And, she's actually going back with her dad and stepmom and step-siblings for, the year. And Percy's like, yeah, I'm gonna go see my mom. And that's where it ends. So let's just get to my final thoughts. Alright, my final thoughts. I give this book a score of 9 out of 10. I loved it. I loved the story. Not as good as Harry Potter, which is a 10 out of 10 for me. Like, this isn't like an all-time favorite, hence why it's not 10 out of 10, but I enjoyed it. It was definitely a fun way to be able to, see all the Greek myths. The characters are pretty fun. I definitely liked Percy. Percy's probably my favorite character so far, though I do also really like Luke. I did really like Luke, though he didn't show up that much. I felt like he hardly showed up, but I guess Percy was also thinking about him a lot, so I guess... But anyway, if I didn't already have spoilers, if I didn't already know Luke was evil anyway before reading this book, I'd probably be like, how dare you? But I was like, I already knew this, whatever. But, technically speaking, if I didn't already know all the plot points and stuff before reading, then, even I would be able to phrase the plot twists, because there were a lot of plot twists. But even if, you knew, but I don't even think many people would really be too surprised that Hades ended up not being evil if they know anything about, original Greek mythology. He was never actually evil. But, anyway, yeah, that's my thoughts. What do you guys think of Percy Jackson and Lightning Thief, book 1 of 5? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Neutral favorite characters? Yeah, make sure to like and subscribe. Look at my socials are in my channel bio, and I upload daily. And when I reach 50 subs, I plan on opening a little Discord server, because why not? So I'll see you guys in another video. Bye-bye now.